The Bruins should make a huge move at the trade deadline. Or they shouldn't. I don't know, man. I don't know if anybody knows. It's the Garden Level Podcast.
This is hockey right here.
Bruins! Whoa! 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 Whoa!
Welcome on into another edition of the Garden Level Podcast, episode 22, alongside Dan Conlon. I'm Cam Stewart. I really missed an opportunity there, didn't I? I don't know about you, Dan, but I'm feeling episode. It doesn't
23.
Doesn't roll off the tongue as much. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. Do you have a favorite number 22? We haven't done that. We've kind of done that sparingly the last couple of weeks.
I will give you two, and I won't give you the obvious one.
Okay.
Willie O'Ree went to the game. They retired his jersey, so I'll go with Willie O'Ree.
Not the obvious one, but the one who does have that number retired. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then honorable mention, Brian Leetch played 1 year for the Bruins. Some people forget.
Leetch.
Unfortunately, he did not go into the Hall of Fame as a Bruin, but I still like him.
Unbelievable. Connecticut boy.
What about you?
PC guy. By the way, there's someone we both know that I grew up with that did have a Brian Leetch jersey growing up. Like, I think it was his dad's, but he would wear it to the games, and it was sick as hell. Like, he could probably get $300 for it right now. Old Brian Leetch, number 22, man. Yeah, who could forget that season? For me, I mean, it's Sean Thornton. Like, Willie O'Ree's got the number retired. That's as good as you get. I have a Willie O'Ree jersey that's number 18, so I decided not to rock it today. But Sean Thornton, man, Charlestown, boxing. I mean, how can you not love Sean Thornton, except for the fact that he's helping one of my least favorite teams.
He's helping the enemy
right now. Yeah, he's doing a pretty good job helping the enemy. That's a pretty good trio, though. Like, once we get outside like the first 15 numbers, you're kind of, you don't have a lot of legends. But that's a good 22. Brian Leetch, 1 year, but obviously very well known. Willie O'Ree, trailblazer, number retired. Sean Thornton, fan favorite. That's not bad, Dan. Oh, Brad Park. Oh, famously the second best defenseman of his era. Just happened to play in the same era as Bobby Orr, and had some pretty good years with the Bruins and Don Cherry in the late 70s. So, I don't know about
might
you. That's a pretty good 22.
That might beat the Chris Kelly episode next week.
That's going to be tough. Fabian Lysell. Someone else, presumably. Steve Hines, maybe. Who knows? Let's do this thing. We've got the Bruins have lost 3 out of 4 going back to before the Olympic break, before the Super Bowl. 2 of those were in shootouts. A bad loss on Saturday to Philadelphia. I mean, let's not mince any words, dude. Philadelphia sucks. I know they kind of hung around the playoff picture, but that team stinks. And Swayman, I thought, was excellent in this game. Bad bounce led to the first goal. Bad bounce and Morgan Geekie just not back checking led to the first goal. Dan Vladar, Darth Vladar, man. I mean, was sick. He was awesome in that game. A lot of great A's for the Bruins, even though they didn't play all that well. Big Danny Vladar.
This is the year of the backup goalie for former backup goalies of the Bruins.
Well, yeah, dude. They were talking about that on the broadcast. They were like, man, shout out to the guys in Providence with Vladar and Bussy, and I'm like, yeah. Also, Swayman and Rask and Tim Thomas, but yeah, no, the guys who play against the Bruins for sure. I mean, Bussy's elite right now. So tough loss after a good win against Columbus. Good in that you got the points. I don't think they played better, but that was a team that was right on your heels, and you beat them and ruined the Charlie Coyle homecoming, although I gave quite a tribute to him on the Wicked Boston show on Thursday. Shout out Charlie Coyle. Dan, shout out to our next guest, okay, because we have got a trade deadline extravaganza today on the Garden Level Podcast, first of its kind on the Garden Level Podcast. And what we really needed to do was find someone who was in the weeds on all of these rumors, man, like just on top of all of these rumors. So that's why we bring in our pal, the Dominican Puckhead. Jesse, man, how's it going?
It's awesome, guys. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and get this going.
So I gotta ask here, the Dominican Puckhead. It's quite a, I don't even want to say an alter ego. Like it's quite a brand you've got going. With it, obviously, all those on Bruins Twitter know what we're talking about, and you're in on all these trades and stuff. But you told us this story before we got recording. Where you're like, everyone wonders how a Dominican guy in Boston gets into hockey, especially, you got the Red Sox hat on, golden era to be in Boston
Right.
this century as someone with Dominican heritage. But how did you get into hockey before we get into these trades?
Yeah, absolutely. Funny story, even, my friends, my family, they pick on me a little bit because, I sort of traded in the baseball bat for a hockey stick, so to speak, right? So, I was about 7 years old playing Super Mario 3 in my room. My mom's yelling at me because I have to go eat. And, I got up pretty quick, tripped over my controller. That controller pulled down my TV. I had an old TV with a tuner. It got stuck on channel 3, which was actually UPN 38. I'm sort of aging myself when I say that. But, I got stuck watching the Bruins on that channel. Actually, they broadcasted also Boston University games on there as well. So I was just stuck there for like 6 or 7 months, just like watching hockey and listening to names like, Raymond Bourque and Adam Oates and, Steve Hines, Rick Zombo, all those guys. So it's like I had no choice but to watch hockey.
All right, so I'm going to do a little follow-up just with your Dominican heritage. Is it all right if I ask this question in Spanish?
Absolutely.
Okay, creo que el hockey es el mejor deporte del mundo. Entonces, ¿cómo podemos hacer crecer el hockey en otros países como el Caribe y Sudamérica? ¿Qué piensas?
Sí, yo concuerdo contigo, tú sabes que yo creo que el deporte de hockey sobre hielo es un deporte bien famoso. Yo creo que uno tiene la habilidad de ir para un país como Puerto Rico, la República Dominicana, Jamaica, Haití, Cuba, y presentar y hacer un juego como los Stadium Series, como
Mhm.
hicieron en Tampa Bay con los Tampa Bay Lightning. Yo creo que si vas a crecer el juego, para la comunidad hispana y latina, lo tienen que hacer en esos lugares.
Y jugando partidos en otros países como
Sí,
fútbol de americano en grandes ciudades como Ciudad de México, Bogotá, Santo Domingo,
sí,
más exposición y más mercadeo
sí,
en
yo
otros
concordo.
países.
Sí, claro que sí, porque hay muchos atletas en esos países, tú sabes, como los dominicanos y los puertorriqueños que juegan béisbol, los africanos que juegan el básquetbol y el fútbol americano. Yo creo que si tú vas a esos países, a esas ciudades grandes, puede crecer el
Mhm.
juego de hockey.
Well,
I
you
think
got
this is
that,
how my
Stu?
fiance. I think this is how my fiance feels when I get in a Selena kick, and I'm just playing that when I'm in the shower. Actually, she knows Spanish too. I swear I'm the only one on this show or in this house. I think my dog can speak Spanish. I can't. So I picked up on a little bit of that. Big cities,
It's
Mexico
Mhm.
City,
important.
Bogota. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How to grow the game in other countries because it's a great game to grow.
Hell yeah, dude. It is great.
Yeah, it is. And like I mentioned, it's like if you can sort of replicate the Stadium Series, man, like in a Caribbean country.
Hmm.
And I picked Dominican Republic not as a bias, but we held the Pan American Games there before. And it was a success. So I wouldn't see why we couldn't replicate that.
Mm, It is something that is obviously a great country worldwide, or great country, a great sport worldwide, as we saw in the Olympics. But there's just so many corners that it doesn't reach, and honestly, I mean, to a smaller degree, there's so many corners of this country it doesn't reach,
Hmm.
unfortunately. But God, we're blessed here. We are blessed here because we are like way in on this Bruins team emotionally. We are way in on this trade deadline. Fellas, I'll throw this out to both of you guys. We can kind of go around the room. We're looking ahead at Friday for the Bruins or the NHL trade deadline and what the Bruins are going to do. And they're still sitting there as the number 2 wild card. A lot of the under the hood stats don't lend itself to believing in this being even a playoff team, let alone a team that can win a playoff round. So, fellas, let's just start here. Like, should the Bruins be investing in year 1.5, really kind of year one of a retool, when they're barely clinging on to a playoff spot at the beginning of March, and they're a team that is 25th in expected goals for, but first in goals scored above expected. Like, should there be investment in this team?
I think go ahead.
No, guest goes first.
All right. No, I think it all depends. All right. It really comes down to it. And I agree with you. I've been throwing this out there for like 3 months straight. I'm an analyst by heart or by trade. So I think I get attacked a lot by people saying, hey, you're very negative. You're a Debbie Downer. That's not what it is. I think part of what I do is I just look at the landscape and say, what can go wrong? Right? What can go wrong? And the underlying numbers always projected the Bruins to not finish in the playoffs. Right. So I was always going into the season saying, hey, the perfect storm for this team is to trim a little bit off the roster, integrate young players. And if you can sneak in, perfect. That is the perfect storm for this team. That being said, I know we tend to fall in love with success, and sometimes that it's not really what you're seeing. Right. I mean, you got Arvidsson. I've been on the fence on, trading him. And we did trade him, a 5th round pick, was it last summer?
Yep.
And I think the whole intention was to flip him. I think that's exactly why, Sweeney identified a player that was going to be a UFA, that he probably thought, hey, he's having a down year. Let's bring him in. He's going to get plenty of ice time. Sturm loves him. He puts him in every situation. So let's see what we can get for him. Did that thought change? Perhaps. But I think that Don Sweeney, listening to his press conference today, I think he has identified who he wants. And when he's talking about a young, under control sort of player that can help them today and tomorrow, that speaks Robert Thomas to me.
I'll take him. And
Dan
I
approved. Robert Thomas.
What do you think?
Straight up.
What do you think if you had to make a final offer for Robert Thomas this week? What would your offer be right now? I know we've seen some. I think we saw a mock trade from yours. I think it included Patra, Lohrei, and I think it was the Bruins first. That's one of the ones we saw. What would your final offer be for Robert Thomas if you had to send it in this week?
So in negotiations, right? So
Yeah.
If I'm Don Sweeney right now, I have a red line, right? If you are including Higgins, if you're telling me, hey, it's going to take Higgins, I mean, you're hoping that Higgins is Robert Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he can be a superstar right now at BC. He's putting up tremendous numbers. He's been on fire after the World Juniors. But is he Robert Thomas? We don't know that yet, right? So if St. Louis comes to me and says, give me your first, give me Higgins and another top prospect, I'm doing that, boys.
Oh.
Right? I think I'm doing it. I think I'm doing it, But I think the caveat to that people don't take a step back and sort of look is that people feel like the whole entire league, 32 teams, can go ahead and offer up what St. Louis wants, and that's not the case, right? So this is where
the Bruins are in a really good spot.
Exactly.
Because we know what they like.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is where it falls in the Bruins' favor because, yeah, you can say 10 teams have all the assets, but how many of those 10 teams are actually willing to part with their assets, right? Maybe 5 or 4 of them. So that brings you down to 6 teams. All right. How many of those 6 teams have 2 first-round picks in the first round this year? Not many, maybe 3. I think Chicago's another one. Yeah. So that brings you down to 3 people. So what I'm getting at is the Bruins are going to be there at the end, right? So maybe it doesn't take a Higgins. Maybe it doesn't take a Letourneau. Right? Maybe it's just your first round pick, right? This year, maybe another pick next year, and you got Patra and Lohrei that can fill out, the holes that St. Louis is probably looking for. A young center coming back and a young defenseman.
And Montgomery loves both those guys.
Correct.
Like that's kind of the biggest piece for me in this is like that's where you can maybe get away with not getting rid of one of your top 2 prospects. Like we know Montgomery loves Patra and Lohrei. We trust me. We saw some of the early days of Lohrei. That coach had to love him to have him out there in some of the situations that he did. And like I get it, he's a young guy. Yeah, if you could get it done without touching Higgins or Letourneau, I'm all in. I'm all in. And obviously I'd prefer our own pick in 2026 rather
right.
than Toronto's. But that if you get that deal done, I wonder, guys, like what what does that look like for next year, I guess? Because you're in a situation right now where you've got a couple of your key players in their prime, right? Pasternak's in his prime, McAvoy's in his prime, Swayman's in his prime. You add another point a game guy who's in his prime. Now everyone's between 27 and 30, and now it does look a little different when you add a guy in that age range here. Now you're talking about making potentially big moves in the summer, a big move at draft night and getting rid of one of your first round picks. So that could change a lot of how you work the next couple of months. And that's not a bad thing, right? That means you're probably closer to contention. But that does change a lot if you could get a Robert Thomas in here.
And the Robert Thomas, like if you look back at Don Sweeney's trade history, he's never had that big trade, that blockbuster. I mean, we look back at his trade history, we've traded first round picks for guys like Bertuzzi, Orlov. We've done the Taylor Hall trade, I think was a great trade. That was a big name at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But if we see what's going on, everyone's signing extensions. You can't really get great guys in free agency anymore, and that means you have to give up stuff at the deadline. You might have to give up a Hagens if you want to get a solidified top 6 guy, and that's just something Bruins fans I don't think are used to. I mean, we've seen what you have to do if you want to overpay people in free agency. Like we needed a center 2 years ago, so we had to overpay for Elias Lindholm. So I think Bruins fans should see firsthand what free agency has looked like in the past and realize, if we don't want to go down that path again, we're going to have to, give up some of our assets that we've got a lot. And it's, I think Bruins fans also may get a little over attached. Like we don't normally have top 10 picks. The Hagens pick was our first top 10 pick since Dougie Hamilton.
That's a big part of it. Yeah.
So I do think, and I'm one of them, I probably am overly attached to Hagens just because it's nice to be excited about a top 10 prospect every once in a while. But yeah, it'll be interesting. It's going to be an interesting deadline. I think Sweeney did a great job last year, and we've built up a lot of assets. I saw the success of last year, and like you said with Arvidsson, like I would love to get a second round pick for Arvidsson. Depending on what the market's like, maybe there's a chance you get a first for him with how well he's playing. But yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see where this goes. But we just had a trade, about an hour ago for Connor Murphy. He got a second round pick, half retained. It's a 2028 second round pick, so a few years away. But it'll be interesting to see if this turns into a buyer's market instead of a seller's market.
Yeah, that Connor Murphy one's interesting. That was one that Kevin Paul DuPont brought up recently. Ryan Donato and Connor Murphy, both in Chicago, both kind of needs for the Bruins. One of those where I like both the players. Don't know, like it's not worth a first round pick. And now we see Connor Murphy go to Edmonton. And Jesse, that's a dude who I think would have fit in really well with this Bruins team, especially if you're shipping Peak out. But looking at the details of that, second round pick, Chicago retains half the salary. It isn't expiring, right? But that seemed like a good deal for both sides, I would say, and one that the Bruins could well have done.
Oh yeah, I think so too. And I think, like I said, I think that brings more to focus of what Andrew Peak may get you in the market. And if you look at both their ice times, you can see that Peak is, it's really giving you a lot of, quality ice time for the Bruins on the defensive end. If you look at what Connor was given Chicago, I think he was at 16 minutes a game. It's probably his lowest ice time in his career. So I think that
he's ready to go. He's ready to give you
right. So it's like I think Chicago was really deploying him as strictly as a third pair guy. Not saying that Peak is a top 4 guy, but Peak has been playing important minutes for you. You can talk about how he struggled this year. He's been up and down. I think he finished strong right before the break. So it was a little bit eyebrow raising when they scratched him 2 games in a row because I thought he finished strong. But Sweeney loves to keep things to the best. So I think it had more to do with trade related reasons than it was actually health reasons, because as Sturm said, he was healthy. So I think that they're planning to do something there.
Speaking of Edmonton, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know who scored a goal last week? Trent Frederick.
Play the lottery because I couldn't believe it, and I don't know that he could have either, Dan. Like you see, like when it went off like back net and back out, and he just like pushed that one in too. Like he thought he was hoping it would count for two.
I just saw that update on Twitter and I was like, wow, that's significant. Because how many times were you able to say that this year? Is this the second week we were able to say that?
Second time. Second time.
Maybe.
Broken clock is right twice a day. That's what my dad always says. And I do want to talk about like kind of how Don Sweeney handles these things because it's something that has become like it's kind of come to the forefront the last week. Like this dude works in the shadows. And he doesn't do a lot of huge deals, like Dan said a few minutes ago, right? He doesn't make there hasn't been a Huberdeau Uyghur for Matthew Tkachuk deal in Don Sweeney's tenure. There hasn't been that kind of star power kind of going back and forth. And he usually does something that we are not expecting. So is there anyone outside of Robert Thomas that either of you guys can think of like, that's a good name, and maybe the Bruins are pulling this off because this team might be ready to move on, and we haven't heard anything about it yet. Because I honestly like this is an open ended because I don't know one. I heard Court Lalonde, who I really like and like his coverage, talk about Adam Fox for that reason because he's like doesn't look like a guy who wants to go or a guy the Rangers want to keep. Doesn't look like a Ranger for life kind of thing, and nobody's talking about it. So maybe by proxy, the Bruins are. Could pull something off. So is there anyone that you guys have been thinking of like, boy, no one's talking about this guy, but this situation's not very great and he could help the Bruins for the future?
Yeah, I think the name that comes up for me is Kent Johnson. So I think he's under the radar. I think he's underachieving. I think that things probably have soured there in Columbus for him over the last few years. I think he had a tremendous year last year. Slow start, hasn't done much since Bonus took over. So I think that's a low cost, hey, get him pennies on the dollar type of deal. And Sweeney loves to do that. He loves to sort of identify players that are struggling in other teams and sort of bring them into the fold. And another guy that I will add to that is Braden Schneider from New York Rangers. So young defenseman, right-handed shot. I think if you end up with those two guys, I don't think anybody would be overly upset about that.
Kent Johnson cheap. 1.8 on the cap hit. Got another year after this one. He's been scratched a couple of times by Columbus. But, yeah, that's one that people around the league are kind of surprised at, right? Like there was obviously the whole doghouse, big-time doghouse going on in Columbus. And then Bonus comes in here. They start winning. And he's still not playing. Kent Johnson's the guy who went for 57 points last year. And young, 23. Like talking about a guy who can help you in the future. You get him now, it's not going to cost you very much, and probably not going to cost you very much if you want to extend him in the summer if he has a good couple of months here. Dan, I like that one. I like that too.
Anytime you can get your hands on a former top 5 pick, and we've seen how well Sturm has been with a lot of young guys.
For Florida.
Yeah,
getting these 2013 guys that were picked in the top 10, and eventually it'll work. Yeah.
Unfortunately, Calgary doesn't have any more. They gave them all to Florida, so we have to look for other teams. It'll be interesting though too if they see how they do in the next few games or so, because they are still in it. They are. I don't know if they'd be willing to trade them to a team that's the last wild card if they're competing with them.
They're trying to get there. Yeah.
Like that's a trade I would love to do if they would want to go same conference, and I would love to see what Sturm could do with him if he could kind of get his career going again, because it's clearly not going well in Columbus. And I think one Columbus fan tweeted, like, with how well the first round picks have gone the past 5 years or so, I think Columbus has been in that top 5 for the past 5 years or so or two, and they just haven't had any luck. Like I know we talked about Kent Johnson, and then I think Cole Sillinger was another top 5 pick they have that hasn't been playing great. So Columbus hasn't had too much luck in the lottery recently. And then you have guys
or just like in their entire existence, they haven't had
that as well.
And
then the Islanders just get a gift last year with Schaefer. Talk about how that dude's awesome.
He's kind of good. He's all right.
He could have made Team Canada probably if they wanted to. Do you think he stops Boldy on that breakaway goal? Maybe. Devin Taves and couldn't do it, but
Taves and Makar, those bums, they couldn't do it. So I mean, just put in anybody, put in the 18-year-old.
So I'll give you guys. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say, what's your guys' thoughts on? I've heard some Owen Tippett rumors. I know he could be a fallback option with Thomas, would be cheaper than him, but still not that cheap. He's a four-time 20-goal scorer. He's 27. I think his contract, he's got 4 by 6.2 left on there. So I know from the Sweeney press conference, which we saw today, he's looking for, young and long term. And that's someone that, kind of fits into that mold. I'm just curious if you think he would be someone you'd want to give up, some type of haul for, and if you think he'd fit well in our top six.
Well, some
Yeah,
type of haul is interesting, by the way, because of what
mhm.
Philadelphia is looking for from him and Ristolainen, right, Jesse? Like this is
Right.
they're apparently wanting a big return. They want like a Carlo kind of return, which, but anyway.
Right. And one unrealistic name that I will give you off that roster, which I would love in a Bruins uniform, is Travis Konechny. If they were struggling right now, that's a player that I would have been targeting like number one up front. I think he just plays a Bruins style. I think that he'll fit in right into the culture of this Bruins team, and he'll be a fan favorite the moment he touches the ice. I think he just like breathes Boston Bruins, and it's unprecedented that he's not available, but it's someone that I would have definitely targeted if he was. In terms of Tippett, he, believe it or not, he gives me some DeBrusque vibes sometimes.
Mm,
you know,
agree, but go on. Agree. Yes.
you
Yes.
know, other than that, I think he fits a spot on your roster. You also have to think about how they're going to handle James Higgins. Is he going to play center? Is he going to play left wing? Where does that leave, the rest of the roster in terms of how they want to build that? But Tippett sometimes gives me that JD vibes, which, I hesitate to give anything of value for him.
Yeah, like I love the fact that you add basically an automatic 20-goal scorer. Like if we're
Mhm.
just honing in on that, I'm like, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like DeBrusque, he's a Cy Young guy, right? Like he's, 27 goals to 22 assists, 28 goals to 25 assists. Like he's not someone who's driving play much offensively, which you don't really, you need goals when you're
Mhm.
looking at these wingers more so than driving plays. Not a lot of guys really drive play from the wing, but he's not going to give you anything defensively. And he's going to give you 20 goals. That's a guy who's playing. I mean, and I like this guy I'm about to compare him to, but that's Michael Ryder. Like that's a
Mhm.
guy you have on your bottom six on a really good team. Um, I don't know that the Bruins are there yet. Like at first when I heard Tippett, I'm like, ooh, okay. And then when I hear they're looking for a Carlo kind of return, a first round pick and a young prospect, I'm like, that's just not, I don't know that that's the place the Bruins need to be right now, personally. But the kid's fast, he's got a good shot. He's one of these guys who will last forever in today's NHL because of that. And that's not a bad thing, but I just don't know that he's going to be a guy that really contributes to winning, I guess. Konechny, though. Whew. Talk about a guy who can contribute to winning, I think. Um,
Yeah.
but the DeBrusque vibes there. Now that's an interesting segue. Because Jesse,
Yeah.
you had a poll up end of last week talking about
Yes.
Jake DeBrusque coming back to the Bruins because it has been rumored quite a bit. Hey, scoring winger. Look at how he's scoring on the worst team in the league. Still a lot of fans. You go to a game tomorrow and there's going to be 74 jerseys in there. There is, there are people that still like him. Big locker room guy in his time here. And you got some interesting results on that.
Yeah, I did. You know what? The funny thing was about that poll is the first 3 or 4 hours, overwhelmingly, like people wanted JD back. It was about 62 to like 40 something. I look back an hour later and it's like 51 to 49%. So I think what happens with JD is that he started off strong here. He's a likable kid. He's brought energy. One of the better playoff performances that I've seen in a while in a Bruins uniform. The kid just performed. And I think the whole relationship with Cassidy sort of started to turn things around with JD. And I think we saw that he was probably not mentally prepared to play here. You heard rumors about him having relationship problems and with the coaches and not seeing eye to eye or, being scratched or anything like that in his response to those things. But I just don't feel like he's the type of player that, if the Bruins were to be in discussions with Vancouver about him, that he's a fit here at all.
Yeah, and my biggest thing with him is the contract too. I participated in that poll, and I will admit I was a no voter. Um,
Bold,
one of the
brave, brave
48%,
of you,
one of
man.
the 52% or 48%
Yeah,
that
because when
voted
we
no.
saw it, early, it was stacked to yes, Dan. When
Yeah,
we
it
Yeah.
when
was
you first said that
overwhelming.
to me, I was like, oh my god, it was like 70% yes. Like, all right.
Yeah. But that contract for me, it's like I value flexibility, and I would just wouldn't want to be stuck for 5 more years on when he's turning 30, I believe, in October. So yeah, at 5.5 or 5.75, wherever he's at, it's not that bad for a 25, 27 goal scorer in the league. But I think we've seen his best moments of his career already, and I don't think there's too much left. So I think there's some little bit of emotional attachment to him from some fans because he did have some big moments with the Bruins in the playoffs. He's the Maple Leaf killer. I think some fans just remember that, but I do remember some of the lows, and I'm not sure how he will fit in this top six. We have a bunch of young guys coming up too. We have a prospect pool to be excited about. So I just wouldn't want to create further log jams. Although he is a 20 goal scorer, and that's something we value, but I just prefer flexibility, and I'd rather someone like Hagen's come up in a few weeks than have Jake DeBrusk here.
Yeah, and looking at like a Tippett and a DeBrusk, like these are good trade chips at a deadline. And it might sound like we're being harsh by nitpicking some things, but like I think the other important context here with the Bruins is like those DeBrusk and Tippett are great moves for winning teams that are looking for depth. The Bruins are not that. They are a team that's winning right now that needs like real pieces, like I guess foundational pieces. Like that's what they'll be looking for. And I don't know that they get it at this deadline, but that's what they'll be looking for in the summer. Like that's the kind of thing they need to start competing again. Like Jake DeBrusk isn't that. And and as evidenced by, he was a good player when he was the fifth or sixth option on your team. And then when he needed to be like the third option, he didn't get any better. He didn't step up. And that doesn't mean he's a horrible player, but that's just not what the Bruins are looking for right now. Like that's not how you progress this retool, right? Like
No, I totally agree. Like when I'm looking at these names that are popping up, like a Tippett or a DeBrusk, that's why I lean towards like a Kent Johnson. He's more like a playmaker when you know what I mean. So he opens up the lanes for everybody else.
23. Like we haven't seen the best of that kid in all likelihood, right?
Right, absolutely. Because if you look at a DeBrusk or a Tippett, if their scoring dries up, what are they doing on the ice? Not much. They're not providing offense. They're not driving lines. You see Jason Robertson in Dallas. He's a tremendous playmaking wing. He's like the mirror image of Pasternak for Dallas. He brings that playmaking ability along with the goal scoring. So if he's not scoring goals, he's making plays. And I think that's what Don Sweeney has to probably focus on. Players that are versatile, players that can play up and down the lineup, and can provide you offense in different ways.
And one more thing on DeBrusk, I think 11 out of his 13 goals this year have been on the power play. And the one thing the Bruins have been really good at this year is the power play. So he's not really he's a power play merchant, and we don't really need any help on the power play right now.
Dude. Like going from the number 3 power play to the number 1 power play is not going to get guarantee this team the playoffs. How about we work on that 27th ranked penalty kill? Maybe that will be kind of the equalizer. It's a good point, Dan. I mean, he is a power play merchant, and I get it. Part of that is, he's playing on the worst team in the league. Part of that, but we kind of saw a lot of that here too. Even when he was playing on lines with some Hall of Famers, we were seeing a bit of that. So, I was just like, I'm so not in on the DeBrusk thing. And honestly, guys, the more I go with this, the more we talk about it, and what we heard from Don Sweeney today, I don't know that they're going to make any real moves. I think they will move Peak. And obviously, if they do bring in somebody, they're going to have to move somebody else. Middlestat is the big one that could be almost $6 million. The cap hit off your books if you can move them. But I sound like Debbie Downer, but like the closer we get to this deadline, the more I'm like, I don't know that the Bruins are going to do anything. And I think they're more likely to do kind of what you were talking about earlier, Jesse. Like, I think they're more likely to do some out of nowhere, I guess not completely out of nowhere because we've been talking about it, but like an out of nowhere Robert Thomas kind of deal than they are an Owen Tippett deal that I think a lot of the league would see as more sensible. But I'm just getting the vibe that I don't know that they're gonna make a big move here, especially kind of keeping perspective of where they are in the retool.
Yeah, I really think that they're honed in on, hey, if we're not going to get a Robert Thomas type of deal where we're going to get a 26-year-old stud, we're just going to trim off the roster and just try to work around the edges and not, make a lot of, knee-jerk decisions on just based off this year. But I think a telling tale, heading into Friday is if Arvidsson's still on the roster, or it looks like he's going to be on the roster, I think that could probably tell you something about what they're thinking. And maybe they have something big on the table where like, hey, we're going to keep Arvidsson. We're not going to trade him because we got this something else cooking and he's just going to round out, the roster we have today. And that's the way I'm sort of looking at things right now, see how they unfold. Because I mean, if a GM gets crazy enough that they're desperate and say, hey, we're going to give you a first round pick for Arvidsson, and that's the rumor out there, and you see no movement, I think that tells you that the Bruins may have something bigger cooking that nobody knows about. Because why would you keep Arvidsson at that point? I think it's all about asset management at this point.
Which Don Sweeney's been great with in the past, Dan. We love a good asset management talk. But the last year, obviously, he's finally getting some assets here, Dan. Like that's kind of the thing. It's like he's getting some assets, and that's why I think everyone's first thought around the league was, man, the Bruins finally have draft picks again. They're going to make some trades. It's like,
we have players in the World Juniors again. Like, it was crazy.
They got to get rid of them. These prospects are just burning a hole in their pocket. Like,
yeah. And something else to keep in mind, guys, it's like, let's not forget that Elias Lindholm played right wing for like the first 3 years of the NHL. So if they have to make moves, and Sweeney has always said this, if there's room to make improvements on the roster, he'll do whatever is necessary. So I think that you can move Lindholm in a special, situation where you're adding a big name to the roster. You have Hagen. So there's a lot of things that you can do moving forward on this team. And it's great to have all these centers or former centermen like Geeky, that he's moved to wing and he's been outstanding.
And last year was crazy. So I do think this year will be a lot more quiet, like you guys have said. And from his press conference, it did seem like we won't be as busy as last year. We won't be trading our captain this year because we don't have one.
Damn.
And
You outsmarted them, Donnie. You got him again.
Exactly. But I like to focus on the long term. I think right now, when you look at what the standings are like right now, we're the second wild card. I think I'm not sure exact
Perpetually
website,
the
but they
second
have
wild card, man. Like we've
been the second wild card
for 2
for
months.
3 months now.
Yeah.
And I think we have a 54% chance of making the playoffs as of 5:50 today. Which
is Monday, by the way.
which is all right chances. It's a coin flip, but Capitals are right behind us. Blue Jackets are behind us. It'll be crazy if the Panthers don't make the playoffs, which is starting to become a reality.
If you can read this.
But if the Bruins make the wild card, they're going to be playing the Hurricanes or Lightning in the first round, most likely. And how we fare against those with our current roster isn't great. I'm not saying we're going to lose, but the chances this team makes a big run this year aren't great. So,
but no Tony DeAngelo for Carolina. That's huge. That's huge for us. Yeah.
So I don't think this team will make a huge run. If we're playing with house money and we just make the playoffs, and get some experience, and guys like Fraser Minton and Sturm gets his experience as well as a head coach, that's great. But if we buy at the deadline and do something stupid and then lose in the first round, that's just a whole nother thing. So, and I don't mind playing with house money and making the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of Bruins fans, Dan, that are like having a tough time kind of differentiating those two things. Like, there are a lot of Bruins fans out there who share the sentiment of like, man, this house money, like we're ahead of schedule, but like this team should be invested in. It's like, well, no, like though, if you're playing with house money, you're not getting an investment. You know what I mean? Like you got house money at the poker table. It's not like someone's giving you an extra $100,000. You know what I mean? Like that house money is kind of going with what you've got right now. And like, I know it's lame. Like I know it's lame, but I'm closer to that camp.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the 54%. The funny thing about that is the 24 hours prior to that, they were at 63%. So you see how the landscape can change so much.
Yeah.
So you just have to tread lightly here coming up to the trade deadline.
So Casey Middlestat and Toronto's first. Here, Toronto, I can get you your first back. You take Casey Middlestat, you give us Austin Matthews. I think we're good. I think we're clear. Maybe Ottawa wants Brady Tkachuk out of there. Like, we'll take them off your hands. Canada, we have heard your bitching. We have heard how much you hate these guys, all right? We're right here, and we got some first-round picks to dangle. So all that to say, like, I think we're all thinking, like, oh, yeah, maybe it's probably not going to be a big deadline.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. Peak.
What do you guys think what do you think Toronto will do? They're in an interesting situation that I'm glad we're not in, where they
what do we think they'll do, or what should they do?
Yeah.
what should they do? I mean, it's two different things, but they don't have any first round picks next 2 years unless they finish top 5 this year. As a Bruins fan, we saw how hard it was to get a top 5 pick last year. We didn't even make it in top 5, and we tanked really hard the last half of the season. So I don't think they could out tank the 5 worst teams in the league right now. I think they still have more points than the whole non-playoff teams in the Western Conference. I mean, if guys get injured and Austin Matthews isn't playing, I think they'll do pretty bad. But I don't think they'll end up in the top 5 unless they get some good lottery luck. So it's very interesting to see what they do. But I'm curious what you guys think they'll do, if they'll try to sell at the deadline or if they'll try to add some pieces to try not to make that draft pick in the 6th overall or 7th overall pick for the Bruins.
I don't know. I don't think there's a path for them to make the playoffs right now. So I think selling off pieces, maybe like Lawton, can they get a first round pick back? They paid a first round pick last year.
Yep.
So can they cash that
they're
in?
not going to re-sign.
Exactly. You mentioned Carlo a bunch of times. I've heard some crazy story that Friedman, pretty much shut down right away. Whether it was, I think TNT panel asked him if Matthews was anywhere near on the block or anything like that, and he shut that down right away. But on the flip side of that is, how happy is he in Toronto? And does that make you think about what you do here? Do you go all in for Robert Thomas, knowing that Tavares is aging? You don't know what Matthews' future may or may not be. And can he be a building block and sort of start over in Toronto?
Is John Tavares close to being on the block? If you're Toronto, I have a sneaky feeling they're going to buy because they just don't know what the hell they're doing, genuinely. But they should be selling. You're right, and get some draft capital for a couple of guys that aren't really going to be a part of their plan anyway. You know what I mean? I'm not saying you're going to get 2 first-round picks for any of these guys. That's not going to happen. But like, you think about it, if you're the Leafs, it's Matthews and Nylander and Nyes with his contract now. Everyone else, like, who else is untouchable there? I would say Easton Cowan, but they don't even play the guy. Like, and that's where I think they're going to buy. They keep their only prospect who has played in the NHL this year. They just keep him on the 9th floor every game. And it's Craig Berube, and he's going to roll with his veterans, guys who have been there before, been in the corners and all this shit. It's like, but you're dead. Like, your team right now, you're not making a playoff push. And I think they are, which is nuts. I mean, long may it continue, right? I mean, sure. I don't ever want the Leafs to be self-aware, but it's crazy that I don't think they know how bad they are. And not that it's this surprising, because we've seen this for years. They clearly are misdiagnosing their team year after year. They're misdiagnosing their targets. Like when they say, oh, we need a heavy defenseman who's going to be physical and gritty. Let's go get Brandon Carlo. You know what I mean? Like, that's where they're just losing the plot every time. So I think they should sell, but I think they're going to buy. Not huge, but I think they're going to go and get someone like a Scott Laughton, one who's not worth a first-round pick, I guess, or not going to cost them a first-round pick. They're going to get a 30-something veteran who's maybe played in the playoffs before. Like they could be a Rasmus Ristolainen team who has not played a playoff game. But
they want Arvidsson.
They could, Dan. That's the thing, man. They could be in on anyone for all I know, because it's that market obviously is such a cauldron, right? It's such a fishbowl. It's such a place where you need to perform. They can't do it. They should be selling. They should be listening to offers on anyone but Nylander and Matthews. And honestly, maybe listen to something from them. Matthews was locked in once again at the Olympics. He looked great defensively. He played a really, really good gold medal game. And then he goes back to Toronto. He doesn't look interested at all. Nylander, it's like he's got better things to do. And everyone says, Matthews, as soon as the season ends, May 2nd, he's on a plane to Arizona. Like he's the first one out of there. So if you're the Leafs, I think they're closer to really blowing it up than a lot of people in that market think they are, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll bring up another team on the other side of the spectrum, which I thought they were going to struggle all year long. And that's the Pittsburgh Penguins. I thought they were going to sort of struggle, to get into the wild card, and you see how they're just putting it together. You got an 18-year-old kid, scoring 15 goals in Kindle. You got Justin Brazeau, with 16 goals in the year. He's pacing for 20. Yeah, it's like, they got Shinnikov from Columbus, who scored 10 goals in his 19 or so games with Pittsburgh. And you got Malkin, you still got who's playing at a high level.
Yep.
Crosby's out, but he seems to get elevated every time Crosby's on the shelf. It's
traded for Skinner.
Yeah, it's traded for Skinner. It's amazing what that team has done, and Dubas has done a great job. And I think they're not done. I don't think they're done at all.
And they're fascinating because they keep scoring. I think in 6 of their last 8 games, they've scored 5+ goals, and half of those are without Crosby. 3 of them, I guess, were without Crosby, and one of them didn't score 5. So whatever. But they keep scoring goals. That Metro division is weird and mushy, and I didn't think coming out of the break that they'd be one of the automatic qualifying teams in a month from now, but they could well be. They do have the toughest schedule in the league remaining, and that'll be interesting. But they just they kicked the crap out of Vegas yesterday. They just took them to the woodshed. That Pittsburgh team must be the GM, man. That's Toronto. It must be the GM. They just keep finding ways, and honestly, their under the hood stats are not as crazy different or they're not as crazy as the Bruins ones. The Bruins, you look at those under the hood stuff, and you're like, that is a lucky team. Right? We watch them every night, so we can pinpoint the things that are lucky and not. But Pittsburgh, they're closer to their expectations in terms of these numbers than the Bruins are in terms of their product on the ice. So it's a scary team. Washington's a team I worry about. Again, not a team in the division, but could be a wild card team if Pittsburgh keeps winning. They're right on your heels. I guess while we're there, is there any other team in the Atlantic you guys are worried about, buying and getting better?
Columbus. I know they're not the juggernaut that Pittsburgh is or can be at a given night, but I think they're playing well. I think they're thirsty to get back into the playoffs and make noise. And whether that's a first round or a second round, I think that they're geared up to make some moves for sure.
I've been worried about the Panthers for 3 years now. I'm not sure if they're completely dead. It's one of those things where it's you
Michael Myers
physically have to see them eliminated before they're completely dead. So just keep an eye on the Panthers. They're not eliminated yet, but things aren't going too well for them. They've had some bad injuries this year. I'm not sure what they'll do at the deadline. I think some people saw them in some rumors trading Rodriguez. It'll be interesting to see that. It affects our future too with their first round pick. Their first round pick to, I think it was, I'm not sure what other team they traded with last year.
This is the one that just came out, is now top 10.
Yeah. I'm not sure who it was, but they have a top 10 protected pick with another team. So
Chicago, Seth Jones? Is that
maybe,
it?
yeah.
I'll look it up while you're talking.
Could be it. But they have a top 10 protected pick. If they finish in the top 10, then our first round pick with them in 2027 gets pushed to 2028. So that's just
Yeah,
one thing to keep an
Blackhawks,
eye on.
because Blackhawks will take the 27 one.
We'd prefer a pick next year than in 2 years. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. But yeah, Panthers, Blue Jackets, those are some guys to keep an eye on this trade deadline.
Yeah, I would say a team ahead of them too, ahead of the Bruins, but like there's a couple of teams ahead of them that are in good positions to buy. And any team that's ahead of you could, bump some teams down and make it tougher for you. I think Detroit is in a strong position to buy.
Mm-hmm.
They already wanted Quinn Hughes earlier this year. I mean, you could have had him. You drafted what was that guy, Zadina, instead. You drafted him one spot before Hughes. So they've already kind of been kicking the tires, and you look at they've gotten good seasons so far out of Kane and Van Riemsdyk. I think as we know, and seeing a guy like Van Riemsdyk 2 years ago, is like those guys give you a good half a season.
Mm-hmm.
And like you've already gotten that. So you've got Detroit needs some depth and is finally ready to kind of go all in and get there. That's a team I worry about as like big buyers at the trade deadline and potentially, just making it tougher to catch an automatic spot in the playoffs.
Oh, I totally agree. And I think we've heard some rumors over the last week of Sherwood maybe being flipped by San Jose. I think he'll be a great fit.
That, yeah.
He'll be a great fit in Detroit, with a little bit more sandpaper, a guy that's big, that can score some goals. I think he could change that middle six for them.
By the way, we were talking about this off the air. Like, do you think that's just a situation where, San Jose got a little ahead of it? They brought him in like early January or something.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, we could be a playoff team here. Here's a guy who's good for the playoffs, veteran guy with our young group. And now they sit here. They're only 3 points out. But you think they're just like, what? We might not make the playoffs. This might not actually be it. Let's trade him. Like, do you think that's what's going on?
I think there's a little bit of that because that's sort of the vibe that I've been
hilarious.
getting from them for sure.
Like they're like, we'll make the playoffs soon. Like it doesn't need to be right now. We might have the MVP of the league if we make the playoffs, but I think that's just what they're like. You know what? Not this year. We'll look for a new keeper Sherwood next year. And shoot, man, I can't blame them. They could get the wrong team and get a first round pick. Like that's on the table here. That's what Vancouver was looking for when the Bruins were interested. They were looking for a first round pick. And I don't want to go buy Connor Garland either.
No.
The trade deadline. I don't want
The Eastern Conference should be the playoffs. In the Eastern Conference should be very interesting this year because you have the teams like Toronto and Florida probably not making the playoffs, and then you have teams like Buffalo and Detroit who never make the playoffs. In the playoffs for the first time, so you get to see Tage Thompson, Dylan Larkin in there. And as a Bruins fans, like I would love, we love to see Toronto in the playoffs. We hate to see Florida, but it'll be interesting to see how the playoffs line up. It'd be nice to have some new teams in there and get some young guys and veterans who haven't been able to compete for the cup, get them in there and see how they play.
Yeah, I guess it's at the expense of the Bruins. It kind of sucks, but good for Buffalo, I guess. Good for Buffalo.
Hey, we both can make the playoffs still.
We could, and right now it is. All three of those teams would be in if it ended today. Speaking of ending, we got to wrap this thing up here in just a minute, but I got to throw one more thing out for you guys. Actually, Dan brought it to my attention because we've talked a lot of Charlie McAvoy over the last couple of weeks here and the season that he's having and saying that it's flying under the radar. And apparently that is very much true. Here's from John Buchagras, Norris Trophy vote. And here's his top 5 with a considerable amount of honorable mentions.
12.
Yeah,
this is top 12.
This is a lot of names, and none of them are Charlie McAvoy.
No, because I can answer that question. He's playing somewhere in Siberia. He's playing in Siberia, so
shit.
This is incredible. I think that I think I talked a little bit about this on Twitter too over the last couple of weeks. Is I think defensemen like McAvoy or Miro Heiskanen or a Slavin, man, they don't get any credit whatsoever. It's the Makars, it's the Hughes, the Werenskis, and I threw it out there. I said, why doesn't the league take a step back, add a Hart Trophy sort of comparable to or Norris Trophy or the Bobby Orr Trophy, something like that. That's
Yeah,
just
I
for the
love that
offensive
exact
guys,
thing right there. Yes.
and because this should be a conversation between Slavin, McAvoy, and Heiskanen.
Yeah.
I think those are your top three two-way defenders that play the game the right way, that hit, that control gaps. I think they bring that sort of different element to your team than just being an offensive player like the Latangs of the world. So I think that's where I stand with this.
And by the way, there are going to be some of those guys who could still win the Norris. Like,
Mhm.
there could be a season where Werenski is that good defensively. Like, I think he's got it in his locker, or
Mhm.
Heiskanen could have a nice offensive season, or I think Subban won it that one year. It could have been a case for both. He was that good. So, it's not like you're taking the Cale Makars out of the Norris Trophy thing forever. But I love that idea. I love that idea.
I think that Schaefer's going to win the next 10 Norrises anyway. So,
Yeah, it's going to go from Makar to Makar/Hughes to Matthew Schaefer, and that's just how we're going to have to live.
Yeah, McAvoy's doing things we haven't seen since Ray Bork. So like he's having a great year. If he was healthy the whole year, I think he was on pace for 75 points if he played 82 games. So he's having a career year. He's displaying to us every week, and he's displaying it. He displayed at the Olympics and Four Nations. So I thought that will give him more praise nationally. And the fact that he tweeted that and named the top 12, he said these are the guys that are neighboring. And I'm like, if Charlie McAvoy is not a neighbor in that name group, like is he in the same state or same country? Like where is Charlie McAvoy like alive in that
Is
fictional
Charlie
world that
McAvoy
you
in the
were
room with us right now?
but yeah, I thought that tweet was funny, and I think it just goes to show the disrespect he's gotten so far this year, and I'm not sure how much more he has to do, but
Yeah. And I think there's also, and this is very much amongst Bruins fans too, there's almost a misconception about Charlie McAvoy. And in 2026, I think a lot of hockey fans aren't sure what box to put him in, like, because they really wanted him to be a top line offensive, puck moving defenseman when he came up. And he certainly has skills for that. But he is a defensive defenseman. He is a physical defensive defenseman who can move the puck. Like Dan, you said, he's going to have a big points here, right? But primarily he is a defensive guy. That's where he is best, closing gaps, playing physical when he has a USA jersey on, right? Like that is what he is. And I think we're still he's still running power play one, it's still trying to be like, can this be our diet Cale Makar? It's like, no, he can't be, but he can be a number one defenseman, a Norris kind of caliber kind of guy by just doing what he's good at. And, with the Cale Makars and the Quinn Hughes, it's tough to put him in a box.
Yeah. And I think he's gotten better at, being the QB1. And I think a lot of it has to
talented player.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of it has to do with, rotating Pasternak, having to be more mobile around the zone and opening up. Because I think everybody was anticipating the one-timer from Pasternak. And who was feeding him the one-timers? McAvoy. So it was really predictable, but now he's being mobile. He's navigating the zone better. He's pinching more. He's more active. He's really bringing another element. But I have this for you guys. I'm curious. Friday, deadline. Do you see, yes or no, do you see the Bruins having to give up a first round? Is the first round coming out the door from Boston Friday?
either one.
Either one. Is Boston giving up a first round on Friday?
I'll let Dan.
I'm gonna go no, because I feel like if they did, it'd be for a Thomas trade, and I'd say the chances of that happening are less than 50%. So I'm gonna go no, because I think Thomas is pretty much the only one I would want to give that up for that we've mentioned so far.
I'm going to go yes. And the reason why is because I can't think of what it would be outside of Thomas. And they just do the unexpected, man. They just do unexpected stuff at the trade deadline. So the reason I'm saying yes is because I actually think no. And I do hope it's our first round pick rather than Toronto's, or one of the 27 ones, high likelihood that Panthers one is not as good as Toronto's this year, but it could be, they could have some more injuries. So I'm going to say yes, because no one's expecting it. Like I think I should say by Friday, I don't think anyone will be expecting it. You think that's really burning a hole in their pocket and that's going to be gone, Jesse?
You know what? I think, I mean, first round picks over the next 2 years. And I just think that the Boston culture, the winning culture that we have here, I think they don't want to keep accumulating first round picks. I mean, you got David Pastrnak and McAvoy in their prime. You got Swayman. I think you want to sort of parlay a couple of these things to, make you competitive right now.
They do have the longest drought in Boston sports, 2011.
That's right.
That's true, man. That is true. That is
The
true.
15-year drought.
Yeah. I mean, low key, the team that we do a podcast about is the least successful in Boston in our lifetime. Unless we're including the Revs. Shout out the Revs, man. Shout out them. Anyway, shout out to Jesse, the Dominican Puckhead, for joining us. First time, first ever trade deadline extravaganza as we get ready for this week. Jesse, I know that people are looking for you on Twitter. I think you said that earlier, but once again, refresh us. Where can the people find your stuff?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, Jesse Med Science, the Dominican Puckhead. I just tweet out things that I just come to head, and the way I say it's like, I just try to look at it from an analytical standpoint. It's like it's what I do in my career, so it's like I just try to peel back the onions, try to observe what the missing pieces are, and try to give my content in that manner.
Love that. Dan, where can the people find you?
They can find me at the Garden Level Pod.
Plug the Twitter. Yes. Twitter. Is there anywhere else I could find short form video content from the Garden Level Podcast, Dan?
They can find us on TikTok too. We're tweeting out clips daily on there, and then we got a good YouTube page going as well. So subscribe to the YouTube.
Yes, subscribe to the YouTube. Find us where you find your podcast. Dan always keeps this show rocking on social media, man. Can't thank Dan enough for that. Can't thank Jesse enough for joining the show today. Can't thank you guys enough for tuning in to another edition of the Garden Level Podcast. So find us on Twitter, on YouTube, obviously on TikTok. Cam Stewart, Dan Conlon for the Rogue Media Sports Network. We'll see you on episode 23 of the Garden Level Podcast.